DRI results for the data center construction. Do you have anything else today?
Sure, just to open it for discussion, yeah, the first two items are linked together. The first one is to discuss the DRI results. The second one is to consider and vote on the special exception application for the data center. And we'll start with the DRI because if you recall at the last meeting, May 4th, there was a public hearing which had to have. Is that better? Sorry about that. So the DRI was something that this board tabled at the last meeting from voting on the application because after the public comment period was held, the public hearing was concluded, the board decided to wait to vote on the application once that DRI. And so the DRI was a development regional impact study done that should have in your packet. I believe it was circulated last week to the board. And this was done by the Southern Georgia Regional Commission. And you'll see there's some of their notes to begin with, and then they have a comment period. So that comment period ended on May the 11th, and then that's why you see their report, which is a compilation of all the information, was dated May the 14th. So procedurally to set it up is we've had the public hearing pursuant to our zoning regulations and rules. That public hearing and evidentiary period is closed, so now the application just rests with the board. However, the board did want to spend time to discuss this DRI before then voting on the application. So that's why we're going to start the DRI report. If there's any discussion you'll have, then you can entertain a motion before you vote. And I won't go over the DRI, I'm not going to present it, but I know y'all have it. Just a few notes. A lot of the concerns were, this is not a summary, but a lot of the concerns were concerns we've heard before about water issues, power issue. There were citizen comments and opposition for it. But again, I think if you look, the comments are broken into two parts. The first part are being from agencies or quasi-public agencies. The second part is the public comments. But I will note too, a lot of the comments about water usage, in a summary form, they did talk about some of the things we've addressed before about having closed loop systems requiring water, a hydraulic study and things of that nature. They did note that some of the application, because it is a data center, it is contrary to some of our initial zoning plans, but that's why we have a special exception here. So again, a lot of concerns with water consumption, electricity consumption, those are things that our ordinance would address by closed loop. And then there's also just general opposition from other interested parties and citizens.
Just in my reading of the report, it looked like the stuff that we hadn't addressed would be addressed through the regulatory process anyway. So short beyond our control to address it.
I will note too, talk about water, there's the fact or the concern that there would be a lot of water usage. There's also the fact and concern about the water being treated. And I'll just add that our ordinance does require that before water be discharged, it has to be treated. And I believe the applicant itself has an on-site water treatment plant. So again, those are opportunities where there are concerns where I think our ordinance has addressed that by closed loop systems and water treatment facilities and before they're discharged into the water.
So one question I had, I guess along those lines, is like, so our ordinance says that the water studies, all those kinds of things, really aren't due until we don't issue a certificate of occupancy until they produce those. What enforcement mechanisms beyond the $1,000 deadline can the county retain?
So you're right, on the front end, if those ordinance provisions are not complied with, they don't get their certificate of occupancy. So they can build whatever they want, but until they get that, they can't take ownership and start their business. So that's the gatekeeping on the end that they want to comply, or else they can build wherever they want, and they can't use it. That's the first line of defense. The second line is when you talk about after they have the CO, they start running, you can enforce it. And $1,000 a day is the maximum we can under a municipal or a county ordinance, and that's the strictest we can, and it is $1,000 a day per violation. The other item is that if there are certain issues that the monetary fines are not getting attention, there may be injunctive relief we can seek on behalf of the county and or hold business permits or business licenses and things of those nature. But those are all things that are the county's police power we can use. But again, as far as the fine and penalties, those are the strictest we can do. We have that already in the rules. As you looked at their DRI, one of the values of this is one project of this size or any regional size is something we've talked about before we need to have, and we do have it. But two, this is to help comply with our zoning ordinance, that there are factors we have to look at, and this will comply with the factors in this 14-2.8E, that this is why you do this report, so you can get how it impacts the neighbors, or how it impacts the regional and the environment, things like that. So this is something that was a requirement, but it's also some of the due diligence that the county needs to do. And when we get to the zoning recommendation, we'll talk about some other factors. But that's one of the reasons why we do a report like this.
Is there anything that can be written into the special exception approval? I guess to require the hydraulic study, since that is the primary concern for so many people. I know our ordinance says before the certificate of occupancy, is there any way to tie that on the front end more so with the special exception, you know?
So I don't know if we could tie it just to this special exception. I think what you're referring to is more of an amendment to our ordinance, just to move or change where it is on a timeline. So I think it wouldn't be, we wouldn't tailor it just to this project. That would be a legislative change to our ordinance, just for that provision. But that is something we added, because I think the citizens will recall our hydraulic study was not in there to begin with, but we did,
That's right.
public comment did add that in there.
I think the hydrology study, they make it correct or wrong, I think the hydrology study will be part of their requirements with the DRI and all that too, so that will be done from the state side early on.
Okay.
I think that's probably where it's going to be. Once we get past tonight, it won't be one of the last ones.
I just, reassurances or, I mean, you know, on the front end would be, that'd be helpful.
That's what I was thinking about, what there's certain things that's regulatory nature that was addressed in the DRI that we were not having control over because the state's already addressed it.
Okay. Now, if the state's already addressed it, I guess that is a reassurance.
Yeah.
Now, not to put y'all on the spot, I was not able to visit the site that y'all did, Datacenter. So, I didn't mean to ask this, so did they tell you their daily water use? Because from what I understand, this thing's going to use 50,000 gallons a day.
That's the projection on the DRI, up to 50,000 a day.
So did they say what that one used up there?
We did not get that information then because they were on a different system. They were on a public system up there. We didn't have time to get in and get that information from them because we were kind of moved from one side to the other pretty quickly.
And different, was it the same kind of cooling though? I don't think
Yeah, it was
closed.
closed loop.
Okay.
We looked at this side and then we went over and looked at another one and it was just, it wasn't really rushed, but we did have a short window of time to look at everything we wanted to look at, and it was kind of, we were rushing to see everything we could see without getting all of the questions like that answered. I have said it on Facebook several times. To go from what that site out there has been using annually for the last 20, 30 years, this is gonna be a huge net increase in our water table, going from 300 to 500 million gallons a year to the pit we've been pumping out to, you know, I think the maximum was like 20 million, whatever, 50,000 a day times 365 works out to be. It's gonna be a huge net gain in our water table over what's historically been used on that site by several multiples.
Yeah, now where did you get those numbers at?
Just going off and talking to the farmer on how much water.
Because,
how much water they have pumped.
and that's what I'm saying, and I think water is one of the main concerns, and it's a concern of mine, because I know, you know, if they're saying up to 50,000 a day, you know, most pivots could use 75,000, you know, a day, but pivots don't run every day. That's one of my concerns.
But the small well out there does over 700 gallons a minute. So times 60, that's 500,000 gallons an hour.
And then I don't know if this is where I need to ask this question, Mr. James, but in our ordinance and all for the data centers, I know we got some stuff in there, you know, about safety as far as traveling. You know, and I'm hearing a lot of concerns about the, you know, the increased amount of traffic. Well, that road's already, you know, pretty traveled anyway. And I know we're going to provide an alternative route, you know, as far as Bugle Lane and all that. Is there anywhere in there where the roads are going to be, you know, improved or whatever before this would even start, if passed?
So I can't speak to this improved before it starts for emergency vehicles, but that is part of what we're jumping ahead a little bit, but part of the planning and zoning, what they do in their staff recommendations in that board, they look at factors for special exceptions, and one of those is factor 2, talking about the is the property adequate to provide for traffic, including the anticipated volume of traffic and the emergency vehicles. So that's something that P&Z staff is to do, and the answer was yes. So that is looking at the factors that the staff is supposed to do to examine that. And as far as emergency vehicles, there is a requirement that they have emergency plans on staff and work with our local public safety people. If there is an accident out there, that they are in a partnership and communication on how to address it if something happens. But traffic specifically is a factor that is addressed, and one of the factors they have to look at under 2.8F. That was completed, and that's been recommended as yes, it meets that standard.
And I also asked statewide engineering to give us an estimate on what it would take to upgrade Pinetta Road to service the amount of traffic that would be during construction and during normal operation. And they had to give us a packet on that to widen out Pinetta Road from 20 feet to 24 feet and bring it up to state DOT levels.
Now back on the water supply, there's no way to put a limit on what they can use per day? Because you say they're expected to use X amount of gallons.
I think if they were going to use more than what they put in the DRI, they'd have to do a new DRI.
Okay.
That's kind of the upper limit of everything they put in the application.
Well, I don't know, that's why I'm asking.
What is the consequence if they shrug their shoulders? What's the consequence? We say $1,000 a day, which I know is just chump change. Really, in the private sector. But it's value, but what would be the consequence of if somebody had to do a DRI and it says, oh, we're saying we're going to use this much, but really plans to grow, we haven't talked about it yet, and we do more. Yeah, is there a consequence?
I believe it would be twofold. I think one, that would be more of a regulatory issue, EPD. You can't speak fully to that, but I think that would be an issue because they are representing to the Southern Regional Commission or DRI what they're doing. But I think what's the first line of defense is something that this county did that other counties don't, is we did require closed loop systems. of water don't require a close, it's like an open loop, so you're continuing drainage. So I know that's a concern, and I think that's why we try to legislate it more aggressive on the front end of this close, it's defined, you're not having to draw all the time, recycling the water, so that is something we do on the front end. But as far as any other penalties, I think that starts getting more into the regulatory or EPD issues.
So again, these numbers don't just, it's not just numbers on paper to the South Georgia Regional Commission, it ties to EPD, Georgia EPD as well.
That would be my understanding, and
We
again,
do have
this is,
regulatory authority.
this is, again, just a regional impact report, but it's also what they're submitting in that and testing to.
It is reassuring to know that they're answering to state agencies.
State and federal.
Yeah, who regulate, well, Georgia EPD, who give them a permit to use so much water. So then if it is over that, then there are consequences. And same on the disposal rights. So, I mean, EPD regulates that as well.
Yes.
Right.
Any other discussion?
So if this is approved, what are the next steps? Anybody know, or what their next steps in timeline law?
Assuming we approve the zoning tonight, then they will work with, the end user, Georgia Power to establish the end user and get the power allocation. Once they have the power allocation, I guess they'll be full speed ahead on pulling permits and working to start construction.
And power allocation will be speaking to the availability of electricity.
Okay, we finished the discussion on the DRI. We'll move to consider the special exception to zoning for the data center.